Okay, this video is called Toxins in Your Food. And it's basically all the toxins I could fit onto one slide. There's more of them than this. And the point I make here is the average person thinks they're doing okay. And they compare themselves to their cousin. The usual, at least I'm not as fat as my cousin routine. Or I'm normal or above average for normal. But what they don't understand is the vast majority of Americans do not age well. They're basically, by the time they're 55, they're fat, sick, and stupid. And they hit a tipping point of stupidity where there's zero hope. I can tell you the vast majority of patients I see, they have zero hope of ever getting better. And the reason is the one thing that could cure them is the one thing they're not willing to do. Change their diet and get their act together, get some sleep, avoid caffeine, all this stuff. So I just wanted to make this slide to give people a sense of what is going wrong, because they're eating processed food and meat and oils, and I'll tell them, look, low-fat, low-sodium vegans don't get these diseases, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and these are the things that lead to atherosclerosis, heart attack, stroke, cognitive impairment. Okay, and they go, oh, well, that's difficult to change. Okay, so anyways, you eat animal protein. We talked about that extensively. It causes like an anabolic phase in the body that raises blood cholesterol, so that makes it atherogenic, okay? And that also makes it diabetogenic, okay? So those things, and there's no fiber in it, so it also increases the risk of leaky gut, and it just pushes you towards atherosclerosis and cancer. Because it's got more leucine, more methionine, and it's associated with iron, especially in red meat, it increases mTOR activation, nutrient sensing pathway. It's sort of like a contractor getting ready to build a building, waiting for its building materials before it can activate its pathway, which is cell replication. Accelerating cell replication increases the rate of cancer growth. Okay, SAT-fat, obesogenic, diabetogenic, sticks red blood cells together by overcoming the zeta potential by elevating LDL cholesterol, also elevating chylomicrons. And it increases your risk of dementia. And it's prothrombotic. And there's no fiber in it. It's associated with leaky gut. It's associated with infertility. It's not what you want. Atherosclerosis, cancer. Okay, iron. Iron's, diabetogenic. It's dementogenic, atherogenic, and increasing cancer risk. MSG and MFG, monosodium glutamate, manufacturer-free glutamate, they increase the amount of food that you eat. You put it in food to make animals, lab animals, get fat. So they make the animals fat, increase the risk of diabetes, hypertension, dementia. It's also an excitotoxin on the brain. Increases glutamate effect of activation in NMDA receptors, overactivating the postsynaptic neuron and potentially exciting it to death, if you will, whereby it'll go into apoptosis. Increased risk it'll go into apoptosis. Sodium. And sodium, by the way, is the opposite of plant foods. The plant foods have potassium, magnesium, and nitrates, which are nitric oxide precursors, all vasodilators. Sodium does the opposite. It inhibits endothelial nitric oxide. It's a vasoconstrictor. And by inhibiting nitric oxide, it's also slightly prothrombotic. It can activate platelets, make them a little more sticky. They can even hide metastasizing cancer cells within the sticky platelets. It activates the immune system in a bad way. It increases the risk of asthma, for example. Okay, soy is bad. I know you hear a lot of good things about soy. There's tons of industry-funded nonsense research saying soy is good. If you go back to the old papers, you'll see there's a lot of problems with soy. It's real high fat, so it's obesogenic. It increases the risk of dementia. It's often processed with hexane, a neurotoxin. It can concentrate aluminum, so I don't like that. It's associated with fertility. I actually think the reason why soy is used as the cheap protein in processed food, one of the reasons is it's a good way to sterilize people. Imagine that you were a billionaire and you looked out over the world. What they say to themselves is, there are too many people. Reducing the numbers must be a priority for us. What could we do? And they look at the people, the proles. You guys, you are the plebeians, okay, the peasants. And they look at you, it's just sort of a waste of space, pollution on the world. And they say, how can we, like a bunch of farm animals, they say, how can we decrease their numbers? Well, we could put stuff in their food and their water that'll make them less fertile. That'll get their numbers down. Brilliant, okay? We can put stuff in their food that'll make them less fertile. That'll get their numbers down. So they do stuff like that. And, okay, so anyways, it's associated with infertility in both men and women. Okay, it's not some coincidence that it's subsidized and made so popular. Okay, if you go to high fructose corn syrup, it's often contaminated by mercury, and that also increases your risk of dementia. So these things make you stupid. Stupid people are easier to control. So that's another reason why this stuff just scouts her. They would advertise high fructose corn syrup as a preservative, but they wouldn't mention that it's preservative largely because of HG, mercury. Okay, it's a not uncommon contaminant in oils to have HG in there. It's a real common problem with fish. It's also obviously an amalgam, so I wouldn't brush my toothbrush over the amalgams and stir it up. Talking with a cell phone right next to your mouth stirs up a little bit of HG from the amalgams as well. Okay, GP, glyphosate. That's what's sprayed on non-organic soy. It's also sprayed on other non-organic foods. It can be sprayed on non-organic beans and oats if they are non-organic. That's why I would only eat organic beans and organic oats. It's obesogenic. It increases leaky gut. It was originally patented as an antibiotic. Anything like antibiotic-like tends to increase the risk of leaky gut. Things that increase leaky gut tend to also be a little prothrombotic. It predisposes to fatty liver, predisposes to increased risk of diabetes. It's an excitotoxin in the brain. The glycine component can activate the NMDA receptor for glutamate, because remember, it's a coincident detector. It also detects glycine. So that's all bad. It increases the risk of cancer, bad. Atherosclerosis, bad. Whenever you say something increases the risk of atherosclerosis, what you're saying is it increases the risk of a heart attack, it increases the risk of a stroke, it increases the risk of impotence. Plus, a lot of the reason why old people sort of fade out and go down the tubes is because they've got atherosclerosis plugging up the arteries all over the body. You plug up the arteries in the eye, you go blind. You plug up the arteries in the ears, you can't hear so well. Okay, you plug them up in the spine, and you get degenerative disc disease, and you get weak and decrepit, and you can barely walk, and you're all frail. And then you start falling down, okay? So, what do you want to do to age well? Don't ingest the stuff. Don't put toxins in yourself. So that's always what I think when I sit there and people tell me, oh, well, I'm going to try to cut down. You know, it's not that easy. I just think to myself, you know, you stupid moron. You poison yourself, you know, then you cry because you're sick. Why not just stop poisoning yourself, you dummy? Okay, and that's why also why some people, like my wife will sometimes say, I just want to be normal. I just want to be normal. When somebody says they want to be normal, to me, that would be an incredible insult. You know, I look at myself as 99.99 percentile in anything I care about. I don't want to be normal. Normal is, you know, like mentally retarded, you know, walking around poisoning yourself like a moron. Let's see, what else? Mercury, we talked about that. Alcohol, yeah, alcohol is just stupid. It's a poison. You can sterilize stuff putting alcohol on it. And so what I'm saying is you should be stuck up. You should say, I'm a health aristocrat. I want to be as healthy as I can be. I'm only going to do good things for my health. I'm not going to do bad things. Okay, alcohol's stupid. You don't need to drink it all. You don't need wine. You don't need beer. I mean, if you want to, go ahead, but just realize it's detrimental to your health. It's not a positive. Okay, and it also contributes to leaky gut. And again, things that contribute to leaky gut tend to have a increase postprandial endotoxemia, increase the risk of autoimmune disease. They're slightly prothrombotic. Anything that's slightly prothrombotic is going to be proatherogenic. It's also carcinogenic. It's all bad. That stuff about 2 drinks a day being good for you, that was all BS. Okay, that was sort of promoted by industry to sell more alcohol. And once they looked at the survivor effect, the way the studies were done, they put former alcoholics in the wrong category, and they made alcohol look much better than it actually is. Fungal inhibitors are ubiquitous in processed food because the company doesn't want mold to grow in their food, so they'll put lots of fungal inhibitors. And there's other preservatives that have some similar effects. But, you know, what do they tend to do? They tend to be they tend to be mitochondrial inhibitors. Well, mitochondrial inhibitors mean you don't have as much ability in your brain to make ATP to pump out calcium, so they have an excitotoxin effect, make you stupid, okay? Things that inhibit mitochondria are also often causes of increased insulin resistance. So diabetes, okay, great. You know, most cognitively impaired people are hypertensive and diabetic. Those are dramatically bad for the brain over time. Okay, omega-6 fats. Tetsumori Yamashima, the Japanese scientist who had the calpain-cathepsin theory and showed that omega-6 fats are much, much worse than people realize in these oils. Oils increase your risk of leaky gut. Oh, I got to beef up this paper. I forgot to put leaky gut on here. They're neurotoxic. They increase your risk of diabetes. They make you fat. Chris Knob, the ophthalmologist, also graphed a lot of the modern health problems and showed they correlate quite well with omega-3 fats, with omega-6 fats. Omega-3 fats are also bad. They make you fat. They increase your insulin risk. They immunosuppress you, increase your risk of prostate cancer in particular. And if it increases your risk of prostate cancer, I don't know if anybody studied it, but a lot of times things that increase prostate cancer risk increase breast cancer risk and vice versa. I don't know that for sure, but I would expect it to be the case. Apeel, if you look at it, I went to the chem data sheet of allowed contaminants, and they were pretty bad. A lot of neurotoxic effect and other problems. I wouldn't eat that stuff. I know it's especially on avocados and apples, and who knows what else it's on. Probably they want to put it on a bunch of other things too. Pesticides are in a lot of these processed foods, or the non-organic especially. Mitochondria inhibitors, SERCA inhibitors, they all increase your risk of excitotoxicity and dementia. Estrogenics are ubiquitous because they're great preservatives. They tend to be fungal inhibitors. You know, good shelf life from the corner ring is a phenol, meaning that there's a benzene ring with 3 double bonds and a side like a cyclohexane. And that gives great shelf life stability. The hydroxyl group coming off, make it a phenol, it makes it antimicrobial. So they're ubiquitous preservatives. And they're too expensive to filter out of municipal tap water. So they're in municipal tap water. That's why I kind of drew it in a mixed color, kind of blue to indicate that it goes with tap water. But it's also yellow because it's in a lot of foods and it's in a lot of personal care products. That's why it's good to be a minimalist on personal care products. And then they've also found out most of these estrogenic chemicals are also toxic to the brain. They're quite often toxic to the thyroid too. Goitrogenic, dementogens. Another thing too, there's a lot of emulsifiers and other sort of miscellaneous chemicals. I listed them here. Emulsifiers, carrageenan, polysorbate, the BT corn, non-organic corn, GMO corn, titanium dioxide. All these things increase your risk of leaky gut. And once you go down that path of leaky gut, you're usually talking about increased risk of thrombosis, because anything that increases leaky guts can increase postprandial endotoxemia, meaning bacterial endotoxins getting into the blood through the leaky gut, you know, from the intestinal tract. So that's all bad. Okay, now here are just things from tap water. Aluminum, used as a clarifier in tap water, a major neurotoxin. And guess what? It also increases the risk of infertility. So, you know, the average stupid person thinks, oh, things just happen. It's just a coincidence. Anybody with a brain knows that there's billionaires who pretty much run the show. And if they don't want something in the water, it ain't going to be there, okay? They want this in your water, okay? They want to decrease the fertility rate of all the proles, you know, who they look at as just useless eaters, you know, polluting the world, wasting space, okay? Unfortunately, that's just how it is, okay? The beginning of being intelligent is to realize that no one cares about you. No one is going to come save you. No one is going to help you. So you say, okay, I'm on my own. Well, what can I do? I shall learn how to navigate the environment. And that's the best you could do. You know, I told you one time my kid, many years ago, a kid was in junior high, and he was upset because the teacher ripped him off on a grade for a paper that he had written in for the class. And he sort of asked me if he should complain or what he should do. And I said, it was a minor paper, nothing worth doing here. But he kind of had this sort of resentful attitude. And I told him, you know, look, pal, it's the story of the rabbit. A rabbit's walking down, you know, hopping down the bunny trail in the forest. He looks up in the tree and he sees a hawk that's looking at him, looking like it's ready to swoop down and eat him. There's a snake on the other side of the trail up about, 20 yards. There's some coyotes on the other side of the trail kind of eyeing him. And what I'm saying is the rabbit going to get anywhere, telling the snake, the hawk, and the coyotes not to eat him and kill him? No, they don't care, and they're never going to care. They would prefer to eat him. It'd be a nice lunch for them. So all he can do is make an adequate system of burrows, learn to stay alert and pay attention to the alarm bells of the forest, like the birds in the trees when they start chirping away because something's going on. And just learn how to navigate the environment. That's the best you could do. And don't try to change other people or other things because you're wasting your time. All right, so anyways, in your tap water, aluminum. It's also often sprayed in the sky, the you-know-what, trails, okay? F minus is in your tap water. It's in lots of drugs. You know, what do you think the Prozac's name is? Fluoxetine. Take a look at some of these other powerful, you know, like antiarrhythmics, flecainide. There's a bunch of fluorides in it. And it's in tons of things because it helps the medication cross the blood-brain barrier. Look at the antibiotics, fluoroquinolones, which get increased ability to cross blood-brain barrier, get increased ability to cross the blood-testicle barrier. They're also neurotoxic. Okay, there's lots of drugs with fluoride in them. What else? Chlorine. Chlorine's routinely put into tap water, and that's fine to sanitize it till it gets to your house. But you don't want that. You know, you don't want to drink that. That'll increase your risk of leaky gut. All the halogens, you know, which means chlorine, fluorine, bromine, they're all and iodine. They're all you know, used to kill stuff, to sterilize stuff. Okay, halogens are not that great for health. They're highly reactive. You know, they need one more electron to complete their outer orbital octet. So they love to steal electrons from things. Very electronegative. So they're like a free radical. Okay, what else? Aspartame and stevia. Aspartame in particular is neurotoxic. It's another excitotoxin. Stevia increases the risk of infertility. And then there's lots of medicines. I don't have time to go through all of them. But, you know, statins and SSRI, they're both mitochondrial inhibitors. And there's a whole bunch of other well-known popular medicines like Tylenol, metformin, Haldol, propofol. They're all, you know, mitochondrial inhibitors. Okay, that's toxic. I stay away from that stuff. So anyways, I just wanted to give you an idea of how bad it is. And it's actually worse than what I'm showing on the slide, the toxins in your food and in your water. And that's why the smart move is to say, okay, I can't change the past, but I can, you know, optimize things as much as possible for the future. So I'll avoid as many of these things as I can. And once you realize how many things are working against you, you know, if you have a brain in your head, that's a good motivator to not want to make it worse, to slow this all down. And you can slow it down. You can slow it down dramatically. You know, typical low-fat, low-sodium vegan, they're, you know, they reach their 60s. They don't have any problems. They're not taking any pills. Versus, you know, all the, you know, meaty processed food eaters, man, they're fat, sick, and they're stupid. And once they're cognitively slow, it's worse because they've lost a lot of their willpower. Tetsumori Yamashima, studying omega-6 fats, said that over time, the toxic aldehyde byproducts like HNE, hydroxynonenal, tend to damage the arcuate nucleus of the hypothalamus, and they make it, you know, once that's damaged, your hunger center, your ability to control your appetite, you know, gets even weaker. Not to mention, they damage the hippocampal neurons, you know, causing cognitive impairment. They damage the pancreas beta cells, increasing the risk of diabetes. So, you know, you get more irreversible damage the longer you continue with this path, and the harder it is to turn the path around. So, anyways, hope that was helpful.